Hey everyone, this is the Philosophy Junkie, and I welcome you today to philosophize alongside me. If you end up liking this episode or any other episode on this podcast, check out our website, linked down below. You can find summaries and even transcripts for each and every show there, and also a link to support us. Visit us on Instagram at the rate the Philosophy Junkie and Twitter at the rate the Phil Junkie. Furthermore, if you're feeling generous today, you can visit our page on patreon.com/slash the philosophy junkie and consider donating money for some additional content. Just a disclaimer before we begin though, I would recommend you bear in mind that our journey won't be one of name dropping, but rather be focused on thoughts, ideologies, and beliefs. We will focus more on the what rather than the who of things. Thank you for choosing this podcast to fill your time of the day today, and I really hope you enjoy the show with me. The philosopher we begin with today is Socrates. It is common knowledge that whatever we may know about Socrates is from Plato's dialogues. So we'll practically be not studying, learning about Plato and Socrates alongside each other, but I promise you we'll take a deeper dive into Plato in some upcoming episodes. Now, Socrates did not believe in written philosophy, right? And there's something to take note of because this is quite prevalent in the upcoming episodes about him. He focused much more on questioning his surroundings, questioning his peers, and finding out what wisdom his fellow citizens had. It was this line of questioning and critiquing, if you will, that came to be known as the Socratic method. Before we discuss Socrates, I think it's best for us to discuss a bit of what the Socratic method consisted of. The Socratic method is a way to win an argument, but it's not really the most effective way to win something like an argument. Rather, discussions, discourses, or even non competitive debates could be won by the Socratic method to some extent. The method basically begins with your counterpart suggesting a statement, or a hypothesis, if you will. You then confirm your opponent that the statement of theirs does seem to be true. For example, in one of Plato's dialogues, Socrates deeply agrees with his friend Euthyphro, right, on the definition of piety. But then he breaks down Euthyphro's definition, and then he shows him where he was going wrong. Once you have reaffirmed the opponent of the merits that his or her hypothesis has, you can begin your argument by strictly stating your stance. It is important that you take this stance, as there should be no doubt within the mind of your opponent that you're correcting him or her, right? There should be no ambiguity, right? It should be head on. After stating your stance, you begin with a series of yes or no questions that must be designed in order to not only disprove the opponent's hypothesis but also provide you guys with a new one. Now, if you see, this method has its discrepancies too, right? For example, you cannot expect your opponent to just hear you babble about your questions and inferences. They will strike back, and they will strike back with more than one point that is not a response to a yes or no question. But the Socratic method is used as a medium of learning, right now, as well as a way to carry out psychotherapy. For more information on this, I would recommend you visit our website, and you'll find a lot of resources on there about the Socratic method attached to the transcript of this podcast, especially. Now, the best way to get acquainted with Socrates would be through the Apology by Plato. It only makes sense if we start our podcast from there. However, there are dialogues from before the Apology, so even though we'll be reading them later, we will get some context from those dialogues as well to discuss the Apology at length. The Apology is the story of Socrates' trial. He was persecuted by three people: Meletus, who was a poet, Enoetus, a politician, and Lyson, an orator. Meletus, among these three people, was the principal accuser, and he is the one presenting the case in the Apology. It's basically like a dialogue between Socrates and Meletus arguing about stuff, and Socrates basically using the Socratic method to prove a point. So, what are they arguing about? Well, as it turns out, Socrates was accused of the following charges when he was presented in front of Athens as a convict: impiety against the gods. Socrates failed to acknowledge the gods that the people of Athens acknowledged and started introducing new deities. Second was the corruption of the youth of Athens by pumping irrelevant wisdom into them, which was again related to the impiety against the gods of Athens. The question in that court was whether Socrates was guilty or not. The question that burdens us as a community that wishes to philosophize is whether he was ethical or not, whether his acts were justified or not, whether he was being a man of honor or a traitor of the state. And one more question: was Socrates stupid? Because there's something that we'll deal with in length soon. The dialogue begins with Socrates laying out some initial defenses, but they're quite irrelevant to our pursuit. The main plot for the dialogue, though, begins once Socrates started talking about the Delphic Oracle. Now, the Delphic Oracle was a place where prophecies were given. Socrates' friend, Chaperon, asked the oracle if there was anyone wiser in Greece than Socrates, and the answer was returned: no one is wiser than Socrates.